The following programme contains graphic content which some listeners may find disturbing. Listener discretion advised.
For me, it's always been the fact of how uncertain it is. Like, you don't know when you're going to get sick, you don't know when, these new drugs will come, and so obviously that's something that can be applied to the situation now, which is hugely uncertain for everybody.
A little while ago, I was reading through my phone and I saw a video of us having not seen each other for a while. I was in Portugal, and it's a video of us, well, when I say running, feeling really fast towards each other and giving each other a big hug, and I really want to recreate that.
Many people don't know this, but during my college years, I was told that it seemed like I had what's called situational depression. I'm happiest I've ever been now, but for some people medication is the way to go, as it was for me. I went to counselling for a bit, and talking to people helped a lot too, but I can't stress how important it is to talk when you're down, and don't be afraid to cry. I think almost everyone who knows me has seen me cry at one stage or another by now.
This is the calm before the storm, before the surge. And when it comes, and it will come, never will so many ask so much of so few. We'll do all that we can to support them. We all need to take steps to reduce close human contact. That's how the virus is spread. Not just at public gatherings or in public places, but also in our own homes, places of leisure, and places of work. Large public gatherings are cancelled. All pubs and bars are shut. And we've asked people to curtail or cancel social gatherings, like parties, weddings, and other celebrations. I know these choices won't be easy, but they are necessary. For those who've lost their jobs and had their incomes reduced, there will be help and understanding from those who can give it, particularly the banks, government bodies, and utilities. Many of you want to know when this will be over. The truth is, we just don't know yet.
Cystic fibrosis, for those who don't know, or CF, is a degenerative genetic disease. From the year, August 2015 to August 2016, I spent in total 4 months, or a third of the year, in hospital. And that seems quite shocking now to think back to, that I was able to do that, but at the time, I suppose I just knew I had to do it, so I got on with it. I'd picked up quite a nasty lung infection, and I had to undergo an eradication process for that. So that was obviously really lonely, and it was made a lot worse by the fact that, my friends were away traveling around Southeast Asia. I was getting IV treatments 8 times a day. The drugs were a lot stronger than anything that I had to experience to date. So they were giving me all sorts of kind of nasty side effects. I had to get constant weekly hearing tests because the risk that it would cause permanent hearing damage was quite high. Also, I ended up getting peripheral neuropathy, which is nerve damage, and it can be in your fingers or your hands or your legs, whatever. And I ended up getting it in my legs. So that lasted for about a year, where it just felt like I had kind of elastic bands tied around my ankle all the time, which obviously was quite unpleasant.
So I've got spinal bifida and hydrocephalus, and while we don't know much yet about the implications, there's lots of reports at the moment about the effects of coronavirus and spinal bifida. We all have to be very, very careful about what we're doing at the moment.
The hardest part of quarantine for me has been going through the loss of my granny. She was an amazing wife, mother, grandmother, sister, aunt, cousin, chef, baker, seamstress, reader. I was very close to Granny growing up. I would often visit her apartment and loved having sleepovers with her. I also lived with her for a year during my time in college. I made memories with my granny that I will treasure forever.
This emergency is likely to go on well beyond March 29th. it could go on for months into the summer, so we need to be sensible in the approaches we take.
So with coronavirus, obviously having cystic fibrosis puts me in a very high risk category. So I have been cocooning since the 11th of March. I think it was about 2 weeks before the lockdown was announced by the Taoiseach, and I came down to my family's summer home in Schull in West Cork. So I've been here since then. I knew when all of this was kicking off that I was going to have to come down at some stage, but I suppose it was a bit difficult wondering when that time should be at the start. I was always checking the news, thinking, do I leave Dublin when there's 2 cases, or when there's 20 cases, or when there's 200 cases, or should I go into work today? Should I ask to work from home? I didn't want to be difficult. I didn't want to make a situation where there wasn't one. Should I get the bus or should I walk? Or is it too dangerous to go to the shop or is it not? And all of that constant decision making and kind of not really having any guidance at the time, or anyone that I could ask, meant that it was quite an anxious period for me. I think it was definitely much harder for me at the start. Now I've settled into it a bit, but the day that my parents were leaving, I was an absolute basket case. I was bawling my eyes out when they left. I was shocked at myself, and I went for a walk that morning and I cried, I think, for the first 20 minutes of it, and got to the top of the hill and then finally stopped crying. Then they left and that was that, and my brother arrived, and it was all quite a stressful time because that was when the restrictions were generally announced for everybody else. And so I don't know why that made a difference, but it did feel like it was a bit more isolating because now no one could go anywhere and it wasn't really a choice, it was an obligation.
The hardest part of cocooning has been not being able to see my loved ones. Before lockdown, I was able to go for walks in my local park, and then when lockdown came in March, I think it was, that was really tough on me, because not being able to go out and about. I'm all one for being active, and I've stayed positive. Because before the announcement of the roadmap that was given, I was really down because I didn't know, there was no end in sight, and I didn't know when this would end, in terms of the lockdown. And since the announcement of the roadmap and the time frames, I'm quite happy and I'm optimistic. I know that I probably. It's good to be optimistic in a bad situation.
When I heard my granny had sadly passed away, I felt a lot of mixed emotions: sadness, grief, guilt, and regrettably relief in some way. I was sad. I was sad that she was gone. Sad for my mum and her siblings and the loss of their mother. Sad for myself and sad for the 16 other grandchildren who had lost their grandmother. I felt guilt. Maybe I should have visited her more. Maybe I should have asked her more questions. Maybe I should have hugged her more or told her how much I loved her more. I was relieved in a way. Granny suffered with dementia for a few years before passing away. This time was difficult for her siblings, children, grandchildren and friends. Each time they visited her, she appeared progressively more and more confused, frustrated and disorientated, and often became distressed when they would go to leave. She went from knowing us all by name to confusing people with others to not knowing anyone at all. Seeing her like this was difficult for everyone. She wasn't truly herself anymore. The way I saw it was, as she took her last breath, she was finally at peace. The confusion was gone, the frustration melted away, the distress was over. She was a religious woman, so she was with her God now, in heaven.
It will mean avoiding unnecessary journeys, shopping online from local businesses, and getting things delivered, rather than physically going to the premises. In short, we're asking people to come together as a nation by staying apart from each other. Tonight I know many of you are feeling scared and overwhelmed. That's a normal reaction, but we will get through this and we will prevail.
in the people that I have in my life and the people who support me and who are always there to listen to me and, you know, lend an ear if I'm finding things difficult. But what I realized pretty early on in this was actually it's not just me going through this anymore. And so it's a strange situation whereby like the person I'm chatting to actually could be finding this situation as hard or even harder than I am. So I've tried to be mindful of trying to be there for my friends as well when I'm checking in on them or when they're checking in on me, that actually I'm not the only one who could be finding this difficult. Cystic fibrosis is a really lonely disease. Firstly, you have the fact that it's a rare disease, so you don't encounter that many people who have it, so you can't really like discuss what changes you're experiencing, what's going on with you, what experience you've had with different treatments, all of that kind of thing. Also, despite having the highest incidence in the world, even if I did know a lot of people with cystic fibrosis, we wouldn't be able to interact because the types of bugs that make us sick are specific to cystic fibrosis. So we always have to remain 6 feet apart or 2 meters apart. And I suppose like it's almost funny now to think that this is something I've just kind of always done, but now it applies to the entire population. So that's obviously just a bit mad. I do sometimes wonder whether, you know, if I could change the fact that I had CF, would I? And honestly, I don't think I would, because I don't know firstly what my life would be like without CF, so it's very hard to imagine. And also I think it's a part of who I am now. I think that having CF gives you a certain type of like appreciation of things and a good perspective on things as well. And so you kind of just have this understanding that you're not always in control, and that good things don't necessarily not last forever, but it does show you that bad things don't necessarily last forever either. And even when I am in hospital, or if time seems to just be stopped and it's interminable when I'm trying to get all these treatments done, like the days kind of just keep going, and soon you've done it, and then it's on the up again.
If I could see someone right now, who would it be? And for sure, that would be my fiancée, Megan. We haven't seen each other in the guts of 2 months. We've been doing video calls every single day without fail for the last 2 months. And why? Because, why would I want to see her? Because I miss her. And we're going to be reunited, even if it's at a distance. We're really looking forward to being reunited in person very, very soon, hopefully next week. But being able to do voice messaging is brilliant. I couldn't imagine what cocooning would be like if it was, as the good old phrase goes, back in the day. Having a video chat relationship is good and yet not so good. But yeah, so that's who I'd say. Oh, and in terms of what would I say to Megs? I'd say hey, and I know I probably couldn't, but I would want to give her a big hug.
Yeah, losing someone during quarantine was definitely more difficult than losing someone during any other normal time. Granny's children were extremely grateful for the nursing home she was in, that they called when they did. Her 5 children were able to say their final goodbyes before she slipped away peacefully, but nothing about it was normal. They each had to go in one at a time, while the others waited not just outside the room, but outside the building. They wore gloves and masks. They couldn't touch her, they couldn't hold her hand, they couldn't hug her, they couldn't kiss her. Us cousins couldn't grieve together. Myself and 2 of my cousins, who were of a similar age to me, could only text each other as a means of communication, consoling each other through a screen instead of hugs. I'm so grateful that I had the support of my immediate family during this time. The 6 of us, who were all under the one roof, could mourn together, have a cry, and recall fond memories we had of our granny. Not being able to attend Granny's funeral was awful. Only 10 people were allowed into the church, her 5 children and their partners. While we watched the coffin being brought into the church, 14 of us, her grandchildren, stood outside. As the wooden doors of the church closed, we were all left in silence, and we retreated to our respective family cars to watch our Granny Bridie's funeral on a small phone screen. We should have all been a part of it, bringing up gifts, saying prayers on the altar, grieving as a family unit. Instead, we sat in a car park, in separate cars, huddled around a phone, sometimes looking up from it to see others living their normal everyday lives, walking in the sunshine, chatting, laughing. I sat there as tears rolled down my cheeks and thought, this is not fair.
Julie, Granny here. Happy birthday, sweetheart. We miss you a lot. And you're having great fun and great money. Load it up. We all need it back home here. Bye, sweetheart.
Tonight, on our national holiday, I want to send a message around the world. We are in this together. To the people of China, Spain and Italy, who've suffered untold heartbreak and loss, we are with you. To everyone who's lost a loved one to this virus, we are with you. To all those living in the shadow of what is to come, we are with you.
If you've been affected by any issues raised by this programme, free fund the Samaritans on 116123.